Buenos días, romper reglas.
Woo! Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Mwah, Brenda.
I'm loving what you're doing, girl.
Thank
All
you.
right.
You look
Hi.
so gorgeous.
Hi.
I'm gonna take a few
Hola.
minutes here.
Can you hear me,
Welcome.
Can you hear me okay, Isha?
My camera's here. I'm on multiple cameras, so this is all new for me.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
You hear
You
me?
can't hear me?
Can you hear me?
I hear you, Isha. Susan is asking if you can
No,
hear
I can't
her.
hear anybody here.
Oh, she cannot hear anyone.
Oh, I can hear you now. Okay.
Okay, awesome.
Just one thing. I have a meeting at 10:30.
I can't hear you very well, Susan.
Yes, your reception is not
So I'm going
way.
to get started, and go ahead and ask questions. For those of you who are watching live on Facebook, please post your question in below, and I'll get back to them. All right, we are live on Instagram as well. Okay, so obviously, if you're in my Zoom meeting, feel free to post in the chat your questions, and you can, on Instagram, you can post your questions. In Facebook, you can post your questions, and I'll get to them as I see them. Okay? So thank you so much for being here and for joining. I'm so glad that you're here. And, feel free to grab your mugs of coffee, get comfortable. We're going to be here for maybe 45 minutes. And maybe we just take a moment to just take a few breaths and really feel our grounding, our feet on the floor. We feel our hips in the chair. Yes. And let yourself have a little bit of a exhale. Let yourself have a breathy exhale, right? When you make some sound with your voice, it helps ground your body. The vibration helps ground your body. So I'm going to share who I am and why I do what I do, because it dovetails right into what we're talking about today. Pleasure as a revolutionary way to live, work, and lead, right? In 2011, after I had my first child and after I had graduated from my clinical training as a psychologist, I started to have flashbacks. I started to have hypervigilance, PTSD symptoms. And at the time, I didn't identify as a trauma survivor. I had been working with people on the Lower East Side of New York in community mental health. And so I was seeing people who were really, really traumatized. And so I didn't identify my trauma that way. So my life looked golden in comparison. But the truth is that I had experienced depression since I was a child. And in my 20s, these bouts of depression would last 3 months. They would derail me. In my 30s, it felt less pronounced, but it felt like a constant cloud hanging over me, much like the commercials you see on television of like the cloud following the person. And when I finally got help, it was because I was operating in capitalist burnout mode, and I became ill with a chronic viral infection that took me out completely. So from the floor, I managed to pick myself up and get into a 4-year-long somatics program. It was a certification program around trauma. And I started to wake up to all of the trauma that I was holding in my body that I was not even aware of, but that was actually controlling my life, controlling my choices at work and in my relationships, even affecting the ways that I was parenting. And during that training, I also realized the ways that I had internalized systems of oppression that ultimately resulted in how I had structured my life, from limitation, scarcity, fear, and insecurity. And it showed up everywhere in like big and small ways. Partner choice, even the choice of having gotten married, my finances, my relationship with money, parenting, as I said, how I showed up in my friendships, my relationship with my body, lack of boundaries, how I valued myself as a woman of color, even how I identified as a woman of color, obviously how I structured my work. I was playing so small when there was so much more available to me. And so that time was a spiritual awakening, like my dark night of the soul, except that it wasn't just one dark night, it lasted several years. But what I learned over the course of those 4 years was like connection to the sensations in my body, and that these could help me access my authenticity and truth. I had a deeper relationship with myself, with all parts of myself, especially the parts that had been shamed or the parts that I had disowned or learned to cut out or separate from. The more I connected to those parts, the more I could connect and relate to others. And the more I allowed my emotions to be expressed, and that included emotions like rage and grief, things that we call negative emotions, the more I was able to downregulate my nervous system, which increased my capacity to hold my own energy and also to handle the uncertainty and chaos of my life, right? Because chaos of life, our lives are chaotic. It's always going to be chaotic, but to really embrace it and own it. And when I did that, I was also able to increase my capacity for pleasure and receptivity, which, right, brings more in. You can call in the things that you want in your life, whether for you it's that financial prosperity or more clients or the clients that you desire or the partner that you want. You know, it can be material, but really talking about connection and relationship here. And most importantly, healing my deep traumas, my intimacy wounds, as I call them, like this, the early attachment stuff, and my internalized systems of oppression was a form of inner liberation that helped me show up more connected, more compassionate, less reactive, and more trusting of myself as a healer, leader, and entrepreneur. So it changed the way that I showed up and what I created around me in a nutshell. And what was unexpected and really awesome was that I could take my clients so much deeper because I had gone to those deep places myself. And I was embodying the power, embodying and holding my own power instead of trying to find it through my relationships with people or my romantic partnerships or my work patterns, right? I owned myself because the system couldn't own my thoughts or how I felt about myself. So I began to follow intuition in my life and business, as I call it, following pussy. I said no to people and projects that weren't aligned. I showed up authentically, vulnerably, connected. I found more ease and flow in my day-to-day. I stepped into my purpose and leadership in bigger ways. And I accepted my own humanity, my own primal states. And by that way, I was able to also accept life as it was. And because of that journey, because I recognized that a lot of healers and leaders and entrepreneurs, especially spiritual entrepreneurs, I realized that like we're so often caught up in serving other people that we're not tending to ourselves in the way that we need to in order to show up in bigger ways, but not just bigger in terms of reach, but bigger, deeper. And so I'm here for the ripple effect. I'm here for creating culture, for generating a new world order from the inside out, right? Because when we can take care of ourselves better, when we know exactly who we are, when we can hold our energy, then we can really serve at a much deeper level. And I think that that is what we're moving towards, is serving at a deeper level, right? Creating more depth in the people that we serve, in who we are, in our lives, and in our relationships. And so you can go ahead and ask questions if you're on Instagram, and here you can as well. And so I'm seeing, how do I help people bring their passion, pain, and authenticity? You bring yours. You bring your pain. You bring your passion, and you talk about what's true for you, right? That's why I really believe in vulnerability, and not like about spilling your guts and about like having poor boundaries, but about doing it in a way where you're holding yourself. And that's where the energetics come in, right? Really knowing what our energetic boundaries are. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of a cough today. I'm gonna have some of my tea. And so I'm gonna flip it over for a second. We see the flip side of this in the collective, right? The war, the strife, the power grabs, the abuse, and the harm and destruction and dysfunction that we see in the world is a reflection of the war within ourselves, right? It's the collective shadow, and what it looks like in our personal lives. It's our personal shadow. It's our unconscious self, right? And we are often at war with ourselves. And what it looks like in ourselves is anxiety about stepping into more power, power struggles within ourselves, holding ourselves back or holding yourself back from becoming more visible due to fear of being attacked, criticized, or unfollowed, allowing perfectionism to be a mask, right? Being hyper competent and not allowing yourself to be fallible, human, to make mistakes. Fear of being seen for who you really are. People pleasing and not charging your worth. Not taking up enough space or taking up too much space, right? Can go in both directions. Thinking that you have to do it a certain way, or that you have to look the part, like you have to show up as a leader and you have an idea of what leadership looks like, and that you have to be that instead of just being yourself and having that be your leadership. The need to be liked, killing your vibe. Disconnection from your sexuality, like thinking that your sexuality is separate, like it has to be like tucked away somewhere and that you can't bring that. Hiding parts of yourself. And of course you get to have your privacy, but there's something also about being real, about just sharing what your struggles are, because often we teach what we ourselves need to know. Oh, damn it. And I'm not recording. See, this is my tech fallibility. All right. So this is a benefit of showing up live. Okay. So other ways that our unconscious manifests within us. Fearing rejection, right? I know this wound in myself. Wondering sometimes if what you have to offer even matters, if it's even significant, or if anybody even wants it. Feeling like you want to give up when people don't respond to what you're offering. Feeling like an imposter. This is a lot with women of color, Black and brown and Latina women of color. Overworking, overthinking, burning out as a badge of worthiness. That's part of our capitalist, in internalized capitalism, and I'll get to that in a few days. And so much of our suffering comes from believing these conclusions we came to when we were children inside of our experiences of personal trauma, developmental trauma, conditioning, and socialization into systems of oppression. And what I want to say to you today is that you came into this life whole, ready to receive, to be seen, to love, to be loved, to express yourself fully. And along the way, we cut out those parts of ourselves, right? Becoming socialized into systems of oppression, we cut off parts of ourselves. So this is the way our energy gets claimed away from us. Either we make the decision to cut those parts off because they're not safe for us to bring to our parents, to our families, to society. And so much of being in this life is about shedding these layers and unveiling our true selves to be exactly who we were meant to be, to own ourselves. Reclaiming our humanity is revolutionary within the systems that are dehumanizing and reductive. So I'm just going to pause there for a moment so I can oh, thank you, Pamela. I can download my live video from Facebook. You are a godsend, I swear. Thank you. All right, so I'm just going to pause there for a moment and take a breath and just ground myself here and just let that sink in for a moment and let yourself have your reactions and body sensations around that. Whatever memories or experiences are coming up for you in the moment. So you came here, I believe you came here to reclaim and own your energy, which involves the integration of the parts that have been disowned, cast out, rejected, hurt, to open your heart so that you can love and be loved fully for who you are, for that you can hold space for other people as a healer, right? To really show up in your life, love, in your business, or wherever you decide to be in your leadership, right? If we want to repair the world, the concept of tikkun olam in Jewish culture, if you want to heal the fractures of dehumanization in the world, you have to humanize yourself. You have to heal your own fractures, right? And the old model of changing the world is of being out there, right? As a therapist, as a psychologist, as a healer, we go out there and we're helping other people, right? But this model is often based in our own traumatic wounding of having had to parent our own parents, perhaps, or a sibling, right? We go out there first instead of tending to ourselves, grounding in ourselves, and then moving out from there. It often recreates the same traumas that we experienced. It's based on scarcity. It's based on a hyper aroused urgency in our nervous system, and it leads to burnout. It leads to resentment, which closes your heart and brings us right back into our survival patterns, right? And power struggles, right? This is not sustainable, right? And I believe that the way of the future is about sustainability. It is about abundance. It is about pleasure. It's about feeling good and full and serving from a full cup, serving from wholeness. And energetically, when we show up whole, we don't even need to say anything. We show up whole, and just that alone is a ripple effect into the world. When we show up and when we lead and live from our intimacy wounds, from our trauma and our survival patterns, we are unconsciously paving the road of the present and the future with that of the past, right? And so deepening your trauma healing helps you recognize and feel your power as a co-creator, right? And it's a real power, not the power that comes from the material or the relational, nothing external. It's power that comes from within, from your own body and your own energy. And that is the power of pleasure, of your own sexuality. Okay. So let's take a breath together. I'm already feeling like my juice is flowing around the topic of pleasure. It excites me so much because we're seeing a massive shift in history, right? Where we are actively exploring thriving versus surviving. We're throwing out the old problem-focused models of healing and embracing pleasure as a pathway to wholeness. And pleasure is such a huge topic, and I'll be incorporating it throughout the whole week. But what I want you to know today is pleasure is a thriving state of satisfaction and enjoyment. It involves a reclamation of your wholeness and joy in an atmosphere where your fragmentation is manufactured by systems and by your history and preyed upon, right? So it's an act of resistance, of reclamation, and it's revolutionary. And when we engage pleasure, we are reclaiming the impact and delusion of capitalism and white supremacy, for example. And those are words that come from the wonderful Adrienne Marie Brown from Pleasure Activism. Pleasure also heals scarcity mindset, right? Pleasure is always available. All we have to do is slow down and drop in, right? It exists within us. And the systems will have us believe that you can access it by acquiring something, buying something in a relationship outside of yourself. But it lives within you. And pleasure actively asks, what's working right now? What feels good? What do I want? What does my body need? What feels aligned? What does my intuition say? How do I move with integrity? And how can I make things easier, simpler, less complicated? So you drop down into your own body. And I recognize that if you've experienced early childhood trauma, developmental trauma, that is more difficult. And there's ways that I work with people to make it feel safer. But your body is the one thing that you truly own, and your body is wired for pleasure, right? So some of those wires may have gotten crossed in your journey through this life and having the experiences that you've had because of trauma. And also, systemically speaking, pleasure and sexuality have been commodified, distorted, and sexualized. But you are the electrician. You can rewire your body for pleasure. And so it's a bottom-up approach, right? I believe in leading, having the body be boss and leading, but it also is a top-down. I believe in both ways. Like some people just approach it from the place of mindset, and mindset is really important. But bottom up is really staying tuned and making more room for sensation in the body. When you're able to make room for sensation, you downregulate your nervous system. You're more grounded. You can hold bigger space for the people that you serve. You can respond from a place of response and not reactivity, or you can notice your reactivity and hold it gently before responding. And I think that on a deeper level also, I want to bring in our ancestors, because actively fomenting pleasure is a way to honor the hard work of our ancestors. Especially if you're a woman of color, your ancestors worked hard for you to be here. They survived. They had to bury parts of themselves, perhaps, sacrifice for you to be here and for you to step into your leadership. And so we honor them by being in our pleasure, by really radiating our energy into the world, by offering our experiences and what we know. And our bodies are living history museums, right? Of all of this, maybe ancestral trauma sometimes, but also ancestral wisdom and resilience, right? Our bodies are technology. We use our technology, this body technology, for pleasure. And the key, I believe, is about connection to yourself. The more connection and intimacy you have with your feelings, right? Emotions, sensations, and experiences in your own body, the more you can show up. The more you can create intimacy in your work. And you can train your mind to pay attention to the body instead of having the body pay attention to the mind. So I just want you to take a moment and pause. I'm going to pause as well. And I just want you to entertain, like if you brought more pleasure into your life right now, and you can respond in the chat or in the comments, what would need to change or what might shift for you if you brought more pleasure into your life, if you brought more ease, if you were more connected to your body, if you were bringing in energies into your work, right? Parts of yourself that you tend to hide. Where things could be easier, where you can bring yourself more fully, where you can be human instead of just like hide behind an identity as a healer or hide behind a mask of competence or of serenity or of being powerful. Like you get to be vulnerable, you get to be soft, you get to be in your heart. You get to be fallible and you get to serve, right? Because I know that so many coaches, healers, entrepreneurs, we teach what we need to know, right? And that's why I shared my story, because out of the own ways that I've made myself small, out of the own ways that I'd been hiding, is what I now offer people, right? And I can take you there because I've been there myself, and I'm still in the process of evolution. This is not done, but I do have embodiment tools and ways to meet yourself that you can use in your everyday life as a part of that. Yes, and someone here is bringing up a great point about like relationship with food, right? Ways that we soothe ourselves. I've also had a troubled relationship with food. And that was my way of like dealing with my loneliness and my isolation, right? And it all of these ways that our early trauma play into different parts of our lives, right? It touches everything. Everything is connected to everything, as I like to say. So I'm going to leave this here today, and I'm going to continue talking about pleasure during the week. But tomorrow, and I want to thank you all for being here and for taking the time out of your day. Tomorrow, we're going to dive into those intimacy wounds, the specific intimacy wounds and survival patterns that we bring into our work. And we're going to talk about one specifically that I see showing up a lot in wellness professionals, whether you're a nurse or you're a coach or you're a spiritual healer or a shaman. I'm going to talk about that particular wound. And I come on live every day this week at 10 o'clock. If you are signed up, you'll get a notification an hour before. And take care of yourselves today. Breathe and feel your feet on the ground and feel the energy of Mother Earth supporting you. I love you all, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you for being here. Bye.